In a moment that froze the nation and sent shockwaves through royal corridors, Prince William stepped forward, not as a future king, but as a husband carrying an unbearable truth. Cameras flashed, reporters leaned in, and silence fell before a single sentence changed everything. What he revealed about Princess Catherine's royal duties wasn't just unexpected, it was devastating. And behind his composed expression, something far darker seemed to be unfolding. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The statement came without fanfare, yet the air itself felt charged, almost oppressive, as though history were bracing for impact. William's posture was upright, disciplined, unmistakably royal, but his eyes betrayed him. There was a flicker there, a hesitation too brief for some to notice, yet impossible to ignore, once seen. When he spoke Catherine's name, his voice tightened, just slightly, as if each word had to push past something heavy lodged in his chest. It was not the tone of a prince addressing routine matters of duty. It was the strained restraint of a man trying desperately to hold the line. Within minutes, the world erupted. News alerts blazed across screens. Commentators scrambled. Social media spiraled into theories and fear. How could the Princess of Wales, so recently radiant at public engagements, suddenly withdraw from her royal responsibilities? The official phrasing was careful, measured references to a temporary step back, a need for privacy, a recalibration of commitments. But the vagueness only deepened the unease. Temporary, a word that offered comfort on the surface, yet concealed 1,000 unspoken possibilities beneath it. What made the moment even more unsettling was the silence from within palace walls. Insiders, usually swift to reinforce unity, appeared stunned. Sources whispered that even senior aides had not anticipated the timing. That detail alone ignited suspicion. The monarchy, an institution built on precision and protocol, does not stumble into announcements like this. So why now? Why in this carefully chosen window, when speculation had already begun swirling around Catherine's absence from recent engagements? For weeks, she had been missing from events she would never ordinarily abandon. Charity visits postponed, appearances quietly removed from the calendar, smiles replaced by official statements. Each cancellation had been brushed aside as routine. But in hindsight, they formed a pattern, one that suggested preparation, not spontaneity. And William's expression confirmed what the words refused to fully reveal. This was not simply about schedules or ceremonial roles. It was about something personal, something painful. There was symbolism in the timing, too. The monarchy stands strongest in visibility, in tradition, in the reassuring rhythm of public duty. To step back disrupts that rhythm. It invites questions about stability, about vulnerability, about the human fragility behind the crown. And William, standing before the nation, seemed acutely aware of that risk. His pauses were measured, but they carried weight. His composure was intact, yet edged with controlled grief. This was more than a procedural announcement. It felt like a fracture, small perhaps, but undeniable. And as analysts dissected every syllable, one truth grew impossible to ignore. Whatever is unfolding within those palace gates is not merely a matter of royal obligation. It is intimate, it is profound, and it may redefine the path ahead for the future king himself. But as the world grappled with the shock, one question refused to fade: what exactly led to this moment of quiet devastation? Weeks before the announcement, something felt off. Royal watchers noticed it first: a missing smile here, a cancelled appearance there. Then suddenly, Princess Catherine vanished from the public eye entirely. No explanations, no sightings, just silence. Was it a strategic retreat, or the beginning of a crisis the palace desperately tried to conceal? At first, the changes were subtle enough to dismiss. Her final public engagements had carried the usual grace, yet there was a shift in rhythm: events trimmed shorter than expected, conversations carefully limited, departures more abrupt than customary. Observers who had followed her for years sensed it immediately. Catherine had always projected steadiness, a calm continuity in an institution built on ritual. But now the cadence felt disrupted. Within days, scheduled appearances began quietly disappearing from the royal calendar. A charity visit postponed, a diplomatic reception delegated. The explanations offered were polite but thin: personal matters, private commitments, minor adjustments, words designed to reassure, yet strangely hollow. As the cancellations multiplied, the palace briefings grew increasingly cautious. Statements arrived without detail, repeating the same carefully polished phrases. There was no firm timeline for her return, no specific clarification, and in a monarchy renowned for disciplined communication, the lack of coordination was glaring. Senior correspondents began comparing notes, finding inconsistencies in the language used by different spokespeople. One hinted at routine recovery, another implied temporary rest. None aligned fully. That fracture in messaging, however small, was enough to ignite suspicion. Inside royal circles, speculation churned quietly at first. Some whispered about exhaustion, the relentless pressure of balancing motherhood with the weight of the crown. Others questioned whether deeper health concerns were being shielded from public scrutiny. A few, more daring, suggested internal tensions, conflicts that rarely surface, but always simmer beneath centuries of expectation. No one spoke openly, yet the uncertainty was palpable. When an institution built on visibility suddenly retreats into silence, it invites a storm of doubt. Meanwhile, social media seized the vacuum. Theories multiplied by the hour. Amateur analysts dissected archived footage, searching for hidden signals in past appearances. Every delayed update became proof of something larger. Global curiosity turned into obsession. And with each passing day, without Catherine's presence, the narrative grew darker. What began as concern shifted into alarm. Then there was William. His solo appearances during this period did little to calm the rising tide. Though composed, he seemed altered, more guarded, more deliberate in his phrasing. He avoided extended remarks about his wife, redirecting conversations back to official matters with almost mechanical precision. The warmth he typically radiated was still there, but it felt restrained, as though carefully rationed. Observers noted the change immediately. A future king trained to master public emotion had begun revealing subtle cracks. By the time the palace finally acknowledged her absence in a formal capacity, the public mood had already shifted from curiosity to unease. Too many engagements had been quietly erased. Too many explanations had overlapped without clarity. Too many questions lingered unanswered. The pattern was undeniable now. This was not a simple scheduling adjustment. It was a retreat, layered in secrecy, wrapped in controlled language, and guarded with unusual intensity. As speculation grew louder, those closest to the palace began to whisper about a hidden struggle no one was meant to see. Behind the grand gates and gilded halls, a different story was unfolding, one shielded from public view. Sources began describing a Catherine, unlike the one the world adored, the radiant princess, now burdened, withdrawn, and quietly battling something no royal protocol could prepare her for. But what exactly was happening behind those walls? In the weeks leading up to her disappearance from public life, whispers began circulating within palace corridors. Catherine, once a steady presence in strategic meetings and charitable planning sessions, had reportedly started stepping back. Invitations to internal briefings were declined. Long-standing projects were handed off with minimal explanation. At first, aides assumed exhaustion. The monarchy demands endurance that borders on superhuman, and Catherine had carried her role with unwavering discipline for years. But this felt different. This was not fatigue after a long tour, or the natural strain of balancing motherhood with duty. This was a gradual retreat from the very machinery that sustained her public identity. The expectations surrounding her evolving role had intensified sharply. With the monarchy in transition and the future drawing closer than ever, Catherine was no longer simply a supportive figure. She was being shaped into a central pillar of continuity. Every speech carried greater weight. Every appearance was scrutinized, not just for elegance, but for signals about the institution's future. Perfection was no longer admired, it was demanded. And behind closed doors, that pressure reportedly began to fracture the composure she had so carefully mastered. Close aides later hinted at private moments that revealed a more vulnerable truth. Conversations that once revolved around scheduling and strategy shifted toward uncertainty and emotional strain. There were instances, they claimed, when Catherine expressed feeling overwhelmed. not by scandal or controversy, but by the suffocating expectation to remain flawless under relentless global observation. The psychological burden of constant evaluation, of knowing that every gesture could be dissected within seconds, began to weigh heavily. It was not a single dramatic collapse, it was quieter than that. Slower, a steady erosion. William saw it unfolding in real time. His response was subtle at first, adjusting joint appearances, shortening engagements, stepping in to absorb certain responsibilities, without drawing attention to the shift. Then came the cancellations, events quietly removed from his own calendar, travel plans revised. Insiders described him as increasingly protective, fiercely attentive to Catherine's well-being. The future king, trained to uphold tradition at any cost, appeared willing to bend protocol to shield his wife from further strain. That alone signaled the seriousness of what was happening. Within palace dynamics, tension reportedly began to surface. Staff accustomed to seamless coordination found communication faltering, messages delayed, decisions postponed. The carefully synchronized rhythm of royal operations developed faint but undeniable cracks. No open conflict was visible, yet the atmosphere had changed. The institution thrives on stability, and even the smallest disruption sends tremors through its foundation. What makes this chapter so unsettling is that no external controversy ignited it. There were no public scandals, no diplomatic crises forcing retreat. Instead, all signs pointed inward to a deeply personal struggle unfolding beneath layers of ceremony and expectation. Catherine was not battling headlines. She was confronting something far more intimate, and the monarchy, built on stoicism and silence, offered few tools for navigating such vulnerability. As her withdrawal deepened and William's protectiveness intensified, one reality became impossible to ignore. This was no temporary pause. It was the manifestation of a private storm gathering strength behind closed doors, threatening to alter not just schedules, but the very trajectory of the royal future. Yet even within this hidden struggle, something even more alarming began to surface, something that would force William into an impossible decision. There comes a moment when silence can no longer protect the truth. For Prince William, that moment arrived with devastating clarity. Faced with mounting pressure and a reality he could no longer contain, he made a decision that would forever alter the course of Catherine's royal journey. But what pushed him to speak, and what was he trying to protect? Behind closed doors, the debate had already begun. Senior advisors weighed tradition against transparency, precedent against compassion. The monarchy survives on control, on releasing only what is necessary when it is necessary. Yet the strategy of silence was beginning to fracture under the strain of public speculation and internal urgency. Reports suggest that urgent meetings were convened, voices measured but tense, as the question loomed over polished tables and guarded conversations. Should the palace go public, or continue shielding the reality unfolding within its walls? For William, this was not a theoretical exercise in public relations. It was deeply personal. On one side stood duty, the unyielding expectation that the heir to the throne must project steadiness, must preserve mystique, must never allow vulnerability to destabilize the crown. On the other side stood loyalty to his wife, to the woman carrying a burden that had grown heavier than anyone outside those walls could comprehend. The conflict was not loud. It was quiet, relentless, and emotionally punishing. To speak would invite scrutiny. To remain silent would risk something far more fragile. As discussions intensified, one realization cut through the uncertainty. Catherine could not continue her current role, at least not in the way it had been defined. The pace, the visibility, the unspoken demand for perfection, these were no longer sustainable. The future queen had reached a threshold, and acknowledging that truth meant confronting a larger, more unsettling reality. The monarchy itself would have to adjust. That prospect carried enormous weight. Public expectation does not bend easily. The image of royal continuity, of strength without pause, is woven into national identity. Yet private reality rarely aligns with public myth. William understood that better than most. He had grown up watching the cost of suppressed truth. Now, standing at the crossroads of history and personal devotion, he faced a decision that would define not just his marriage, but his leadership. When he chose to speak, it was not impulsive. It was the culmination of days, perhaps weeks of mounting clarity. Insiders described the shift as decisive. The heir who once deferred to protocol stepped forward with unmistakable resolve. In doing so, he assumed a leadership role earlier than many had anticipated, signaling that the next era of the monarchy may not mirror the last. This was not rebellion. It was adaptation, a recognition that survival sometimes demands evolution, yet the emotional cost of that choice was immense. Transparency meant exposing vulnerability in an institution trained to conceal it. It meant admitting that even those wrapped in tradition and ceremony are not immune to human limits. William's words carried composure, but beneath them lay sacrifice, the surrender of privacy, the acceptance of scrutiny, the knowledge that once spoken, the truth cannot be reclaimed. In choosing openness over tradition, he did more than address a nation. He redefined the balance between crown and family, between expectation and empathy. And though his statement appeared measured, controlled, almost restrained, it marked a turning point that will echo far beyond this moment. But even as William spoke, his words revealed only part of the truth, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Sometimes, what's left unsaid speaks louder than any official statement. William's carefully chosen words raised as many questions as they answered. Observers began dissecting every phrase, every pause, searching for the truth buried beneath royal restraint, and what they uncovered hinted at a far more complicated reality. From the very first sentence, his language was deliberate. He spoke of adjustments rather than withdrawals, of prioritizing well-being instead of crisis. To the casual listener, the message sounded steady, even reassuring, but royal communication has always thrived on nuance. Words are rarely accidental. The absence of specifics, no timeline, no defined outcome, no direct explanation became the loudest element of all. In a system where clarity is usually calibrated to avoid chaos, this level of ambiguity felt strategic. Particularly striking was his reference to Catherine's duties. Not her health, not her recovery. Duties, a term that frames identity around responsibility to the crown. By placing emphasis there, William subtly shifted the narrative away from personal vulnerability and toward institutional continuity. Yet in doing so, he also revealed something deeper, that her role, as it had been constructed, could no longer continue unchanged. Analysts noted that this phrasing suggested structural recalibration rather than a brief pause. It implied evolution, and evolution within a monarchy is never insignificant. Then there was the invocation of well-being, a modern word in an ancient institution. It signaled awareness of mental and emotional strain without confirming its extent. Experts in royal protocol observed that such terminology often serves as protective cover broad enough to prevent speculation from landing on one specific cause, yet pointed enough to prepare the public for a prolonged absence. The palace has mastered this art over centuries, revealed just enough to maintain trust, withhold enough to preserve control. Equally telling was what did not happen. Catherine did not speak. There was no joint appearance, no personal message delivered in her own voice. In an era where public figures often address challenges directly to generate empathy, her silence felt deliberate. Some interpreted it as protection. Others saw it as evidence of deeper complexity, perhaps circumstances that made direct communication impossible or strategically unwise. Either way, the absence reinforced the sense that the full picture remained carefully guarded. Observers also began examining the broader implications. If Catherine's role were to be permanently reshaped, even subtly, what would that mean for the monarchy's public image, for succession optics, for the carefully cultivated vision of a seamless transition to the next reign? William's composure suggested confidence, yet the content of his message hinted at adaptation under pressure. The institution that prides itself on endurance was quietly acknowledging vulnerability. Royal historians pointed out that strategic ambiguity has long been used to buy time to stabilize, to reorganize, to prepare the public for change. And change, however measured, seems inevitable. The language of permanence hovered just beneath the surface, even as the official tone remained cautiously temporary. This layered messaging has fueled a growing belief that the story shared so far is only a fragment of a larger, more intricate reality. Because beneath every restrained phrase lies a question that refuses to settle. If this were merely a short-term adjustment, why frame it with such careful gravity? Why adopt language that subtly prepares the public for transformation rather than reassurance? The answers remain elusive, shielded by tradition and strategy. And as the public searched for clarity, the emotional ripple effect began to reach far beyond the palace walls. From London to the farthest corners of the world, the reaction was immediate and deeply emotional. For many, Catherine wasn't just a princess, she was a symbol of grace, strength, and stability. Now, that symbol seemed fragile, and as the news spread, a collective sense of uncertainty began to take hold. It was striking how quickly the tone shifted. There had been no confirmed tragedy, no formal declaration of loss, and yet the atmosphere carried something that felt eerily similar to mourning. Messages of support poured in by the thousands, then the millions. Social media became a living tapestry of concern, strangers sharing personal stories of how Catherine's composure had inspired them through their own struggles. People who had never met her spoke of her as if she were part of their family. That is the power of symbolism. And when a symbol wavers, it touches something deeply personal. The media, too, seemed caught between reverence and anxiety. Headlines that once celebrated her elegance and poise began asking careful but pointed questions. Commentators revisited past royal crises, drawing parallels to moments when the monarchy had faced emotional crossroads. The comparisons were not dramatic for the sake of spectacle, they were reflective of a deeper public memory. The institution has endured storms before, but each storm leaves a mark, reshaping how the crown is perceived and how it must respond. Cath. Doubtless, Erin had long represented a modern bridge within an ancient system. She carried tradition with ease, yet embodied relatability in a way few royals ever have. Her journey from university student to future queen felt accessible, almost aspirational. She balanced motherhood and monarchy with what appeared to be effortless dignity. That narrative of quiet strength had become central to the monarchy's contemporary image. Without her visible presence, that image suddenly felt incomplete. Public fear was not just about one individual stepping back. It was about stability, about continuity, about what her absence might signal regarding the future of the institution itself. The monarchy relies heavily on emotional connection to remain relevant in a rapidly changing world. Catherine had cultivated that connection carefully, consistently. Her warmth softened the rigidity of tradition. Her composure reassured during times of national uncertainty. Now, the question lingered. Could that delicate balance endure without her steady presence? Support for her grew louder with each passing day. Campaigns emerged, urging privacy and compassion. Others demanded clarity, arguing that transparency was essential in maintaining trust. This tension between respect for personal boundaries and the public's right to understand created a charged atmosphere. It was no longer just a royal matter. It had become a societal conversation about vulnerability, leadership, and the human cost of public life. What made the reaction so profound was the emotional investment people felt in Catherine's journey. They had watched her evolve over years, through triumphs and quiet trials. They believed in the narrative of resilience, and now, faced with uncertainty, they clung to hope while bracing for revelation. The monarchy had not announced a catastrophe, yet the emotional weight suggested that something significant had shifted. As conversations intensified and calls for openness grew stronger, one reality became clear. The story was no longer confined to palace walls. It belonged to the public imagination, to collective concern, to a world waiting for reassurance. But as the public searched for answers, attention turned back to the man at the center of it all, Prince William. In the aftermath of the announcement, one image lingered: Prince William standing alone. Not just physically, but emotionally. As the future king, he now carried not only the weight of the crown, but the absence of the partner who had stood beside him through it all. And for the first time, the world began to see just how heavy that burden truly was. The shift was immediate. Engagements once shared became solitary obligations. Causes they had championed together now rested squarely on his shoulders. Where there had once been a quiet exchange of glances, a subtle partnership that steadied the room, there was now a singular presence moving through duty with disciplined resolve. William did not falter publicly. He could not. But observers noticed the difference. The pauses were longer. The smiles, though genuine, carried fatigue at the edges. He spoke with clarity, yet something unspoken lingered beneath the surface, a man recalibrating in real time. Balancing the demands of monarchy has never been simple. But now the equation had grown more complex. Duty did not slow, fatherhood did not pause. And whatever private struggle had forced this turning point did not disappear simply because the cameras were present. Insiders described a schedule rearranged with precision, ensuring stability for his children while safeguarding the institution from disruption. Yet even the most carefully managed routine cannot erase emotional strain. Leadership during personal crisis requires a different kind of endurance, one that roars from reserves few ever have to test. Media scrutiny intensified rather than softened. Every appearance became a study in composure. Analysts dissected his tone, his posture, the cadence of his remarks. Was he signaling permanence? Was he masking deeper concern? The public, once focused solely on Catherine's absence, began examining William's transformation, and what they saw was layered strength intertwined with vulnerability. He projected steadiness, yet there was an undeniable humanity breaking through the royal armor. For some, this deepened admiration. For others, it amplified unease. Because if the future king appears burdened, what does that imply about the storm he is navigating? Within palace walls, the pressure to maintain continuity grew sharper. Stability is the monarchy's lifeblood. Any sign of imbalance invites speculation about its resilience. William understood this instinctively. He had been raised within its rhythms, trained to protect its image. Yet this moment demanded more than image management. It required emotional clarity, decisive leadership, and an acceptance that the path ahead may no longer resemble the one carefully mapped out years ago. There is a loneliness that accompanies command, especially when shared burdens suddenly become solitary ones. William now occupies a space both elevated and isolating, guided by tradition, yet confronting circumstances that tradition cannot fully address. In stepping forward alone, he has signaled adaptation, but adaptation often carries permanence. And permanence reshapes destinies. What began as a temporary adjustment now feels like the early stages of a profound shift in royal dynamics. The partnership that once symbolized continuity stands altered. The balance between private devotion and public expectation has been tested and may never return to its former symmetry. And as William moved forward, this question remained: what does this mean for Catherine's future and the monarchy itself? The monarchy has always thrived on continuity, but now that continuity feels uncertain. With Catherine stepping away from her royal duties, the future of the institution itself seems to hang in delicate balance. Is this a temporary pause or the beginning of a transformation no one saw coming? And what role, if any, will Catherine play in what comes next? Speculation has moved beyond concern for her well-being and into deeper, more structural territory. If her absence stretches longer than anticipated, the blueprint of the future monarchy may need to be redrawn. Catherine was never simply a ceremonial presence. She was a cornerstone of the next generation's identity. Her influence shaped charitable priorities, modernized public engagement, and softened the rigidity of tradition with warmth that felt authentic. Without her visible partnership beside William, questions about her long-term role grow louder. Will she return to the same responsibilities, or will those duties evolve into something quieter, more protected, yet equally significant behind the scenes? Within palace strategy rooms, conversations are undoubtedly shifting. A redistribution of responsibilities may already be underway. Senior royals could assume expanded roles. Emerging figures might step forward sooner than expected. Such recalibration would not signal collapse, but it would mark undeniable transformation. The monarchy has survived by adapting carefully, often silently, to the pressures of its time. Yet this moment feels different. This adaptation is unfolding in real time, under relentless public scrutiny, forcing an institution built on mystique to confront vulnerability openly. Public perception hangs delicately in the balance. For years, Catherine symbolized stability, a reassuring constant in an unpredictable world. Her journey mirrored a modern fairy tale, grounded in relatability. Now, that narrative is being rewritten, not erased but reshaped. There is sympathy, yes, there is support, but there is also uncertainty. And uncertainty can alter how a nation relates to its crown. If the future queen's role becomes less visible, how does that redefine the monarchy's connection to the public? If transparency increases, does that strengthen trust or expose fragility? History offers parallels, though none identical. Past royal transitions have been marked by personal crises, unexpected abdications, seismic shifts that redefined eras. Each time, the institution endured but not unchanged. It emerged altered, its image recalibrated to meet the demands of a new generation. This moment may not carry the drama of abdication or scandal, yet its emotional resonance feels equally profound. It challenges the assumption that continuity is automatic. It reminds the public that succession is not just about lineage, it is about resilience, perception, and relevance. Questions of influence also linger. Even if Catherine's public role diminishes temporarily, her impact remains deeply woven into the monarchy's future. Influence does not always require visibility. It can operate quietly, shaping priorities and guiding decisions from behind closed doors. Yet the world, accustomed to seeing her at the forefront, may struggle to reconcile a more subdued presence. In that tension lies the heart of this transformation. Perhaps the most striking element of all is how swiftly her legacy is being redefined in real time. Once celebrated primarily for elegance and composure, she is now viewed through the lens of vulnerability and endurance. The narrative has deepened, the symbolism has shifted, and still, one mystery persists. How much of this story remains untold? What truth is still shielded by careful, why-chosen words and measured silence? The monarchy stands at a threshold caught between tradition and evolution, privacy and transparency, strength and humanity. Catherine's future within it remains uncertain, yet undeniably pivotal. And as the institution navigates this fragile chapter, one reality becomes impossible to ignore. Transformation, once begun, rarely reverses. As the curtain falls on this chapter, one truth remains behind every royal title lies a human story, and sometimes even a crown cannot shield it from heartbreak. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.